And on to the topic of today's event, AI-powered tools are reshaping the way we create software, from accelerating iteration cycles to enabling smarter debugging and delivering standout user experiences. So I thought it would be interesting for us all to explore how to leverage free and open source tools to amplify agentic developer workflows. So I invited Brian Douglas, to show us how we can build better, faster, and hopefully smarter. Brian, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I um, I asked before we hit the recording where folks were coming from AI. We have at least one person who's teaching courses. But if anybody wants to just drop in like their experience in AI, so if it's Copilot, if it's zero, and you still handwrite every piece of line of code, that would be really good and useful as I sort of navigate these slides. This is actually a talk that I'm probably going to be giving a few times this fall. So last week was the first time I've given this talk, and it was in Nigeria, and it was a bit of a mix between brand new developers versus folks who had like years and years of experience. But I think everyone in, at least in Lagos where I was speaking, had a minimal experience when it came to AI. So what I want to do is talk through. So like, feel free to drop in the chat, and yeah, this is your time. You're taking time out of your day to sit here. So asking questions will be super valuable, and I can go deeper or as light where you care. So there's a concept called continuous AI, which I do want to cover within this concept. If you have like the same sort of mental frame of like continuous integration or continuous deployment, I think continuous AI kind of fits within that mix, and that's kind of how this the description of this talk was meant to be. So. This is me. I go by BDougie on GitHub. I used to work at GitHub for almost 5 years, so I just got it stuck that that was my name. People called me by that. And this is all my socials are here. So if you want to connect with me after this talk, or if you want to have a chat after, I should probably add my calendar link on that too as well in the future. Um, but what I'm getting at is, yeah, would love to connect and chat with anybody who wants to talk about continuous AI after this. Hopefully, it's interesting for everyone. Um, I specifically, as I mentioned, I used to work at GitHub. I used to run a company called Open Source where we did GitHub Insights into open source repos. I'm a big fan of open source. My journey is I actually was doing sales about 12 years ago. I'm looking at my calendar on the right because it's 2025. It's crazy. And then I was getting my MBA and had an idea for an app, and then open source like unveiled itself as I was Googling, and that's how I was able to build my little side project to eventually getting a job as a full-time dev, moving from sales. So, super passionate about this like open, free information, folks that can just leverage that. A lot of what I do, most of what I do is just open on random GitHub repos, not meant for stars or likes or hearts or whatever, but really just for me to find later. So this is why I do stuff like this. This is a thing that I've actually been working on the last couple months since June. It's called Contributor Info. I was actually used do some demos from this project, but I actually found a bug on my blog as I was going to share it. So I actually might just do a demo for my blog. And if we get to that, we could talk about this. But this is really this contributor insights into repos. It's kind of a successor project to it's open source to what I was building the last couple years. And I didn't mention that, but what I built, I ended up giving to the Linux Foundation. So a part of their product is powered by the ideas that came from my previous product was called Open Source. Um, but I would, and again, this was the space at where I gave this talk last week. It was really around Nigerians who really wanted to break into the industry and like find the next role. But there's like a real thing happening right now where like everyone like the question is like, is AI taking your job? And I think we've kind of answered that. Like I think what it's doing right now is amplifying folks who already have jobs, but it's also providing a not a barrier, but like a different perspective on folks who are just entering the industry with AI. And I'm happy to get and dig into that and answer questions around this. But where where I'm coming from is like I believe that AI is amplifying devs, and for folks who are coming to industry, I think what it really is enhancing is that your ability to interact with AI alongside of it, but you also need to like leverage and learn. And I'll get to that in like a couple slides. But yeah, we've seen a lot of layoffs in the last couple years. It's been interesting. Like seeing our peers, our coworkers, the companies that we came from or worked at, maybe we were also impacted by this. Um, like seeing this like the change in how the industry is now being positioned. And for folks who have been doing this for, I've been doing this like 12 years, but folks who've been doing this like 20, 30 years, like you've seen this cycle already happen before, maybe multiple times. What's interesting right now is the trajectory of AI, or sorry, companies post 2022, these AI companies that are just like accelerating growth and getting mass adoption. There's a question around if this is a bubble, if this is not a bubble. Again, like we could all speculate on this, but like past performance can be predictor of future growth, maybe not. But what I'm getting at is like there is a trend of companies that are leveraging AI or maybe supporting AI through like dev tools. They're having a moment right now, so it's worth us as engineers and practitioners in the space to just pay attention and have our own commentary around that. Um, and that was my commentary on X, which was there are two types of companies, one that started before 2022 and ones that started after in AI, and there's like a very distinct difference in some of the newer companies and how they're operating and like it. Yeah, it's just interesting, and I love having. I'm drinking my coffee right now. I love having coffee with folks and chatting about this stuff and just really waxing poetic. I guess I've been around long enough that I can be more nostalgic about my career as opposed to like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Um, but I had mentioned also about my on-ramp into development. Came from sales, had an idea, learned how to code through open source. No CS background. I kind of learned everything on the job pretty much from day one in 2013 when I took my first role as an engineer. And I gave my story on the GitHub README podcast as well as on their blog. So if anybody's interested in my background, feel free to like take a look. But what I was getting at, and what I was kind of skipping ahead was like, I think what it comes down to, like continuous AI and also leveraging AI, is like the ability to learn how to learn. And there's a lot of folks who like want to do the one shot, the zero shot prompts or build a full on startup with like some app builder. And it's like a great story. It looks great. But at the end of the day, is like when you get to the bugging part, or if you like drop a database by accident, the thing that we all learned for the past like 10 to 15 years, 20 years plus, is like what actually helps us accelerate with these tools. So like if the AI is doing something weird, folks with experience will be like, hey, that's weird. Let's not do that. Let's create some structure and edge cases and testing and like make sure the build passes or pre-commit hooks, whatever it is, to prevent the AI from doing anything that's out of bounds. And I think that's the one thing that when you come to think about like continuous AI, it's like the concept. Well, sorry, I have a slide on this, but I'll define continuous AI in a couple slides, but what I'm getting at is to take a step back is like the goal really is like we should all know what these tools are doing and know like what proper best practices are for developing software. And when you have that as like a foundation, like I think you're good to go experiment and like and leverage AI. For folks who don't have that experiment or sorry, have that foundation, I think it's an encouragement to point people to that direction. This is what I continuous AI is like what I'm really encouraging people to do is like, yes, try it out, have fun, build stuff on the weekends, but really take a step back and kind of understand how these pieces work together. Um, I'll skip this because I did have a workshop that I kind of walked through all these practices at the conference from last week. So I had meant to edit these slides to be specific to this, but like I got back from Nigeria like 2 days ago, and I've just been sleeping since. So apologies on not moving this slide. But if you're interested in building a mobile first chat app for folks in Africa, that's what we built, and we use prompts entirely to build it. So in every single section inside of the repo has background information on how things are working and like blog posts that you can go dig into to learn how to learn essentially. Um, my day job is actually Continue.dev. I work as head of developer experience there. I engage with partners, folks who are building tools in the AI space, as well as with the developers who contribute to our open source code base. So Continue is 100% open source. We do have a website that the landing page actually is not open source, but the entire product itself, that is open source. So it's not open core, it's specifically open source. And we do that because like what we like about Continue is like people build on top of Continue. So a lot of companies have built their own AI agents on top of some of the stuff that we built. We also are deployed at large enterprises as well as like individual developers who just want a VS Code extension to get at parity of what you get with Copilot. So that's what our goal and our mission is really just to democratize and like expand what AI is doing, but also make it accessible. So there's documentation on how to like set this up. I'll go through a couple examples in my repo that actually has like a guide on how to set up if you want to leverage it local. You could also leverage only 100% local with local models. So I built I built a tool recently, which is it's in 3 slides. I'm talking about my three, like everything's 3 slides earlier, so I'll try to slow down. But what I'm getting at is like if you're interested, check it out. There are a bunch of other tools as well, so check those out as well. I think compare and contrast, find out what works for you, and then yeah, go with that. So continuous AI, what is this? If you Google it, hopefully our blog post will come up or like in the top three. Um, but like, what is continuous AI? It's the integration of intelligent automation directly in your developer workflows, making a system that's natural and reliable, as like syntax highlighting our code completion. The idea is like you could have a loop where the AI is like doing a thing of like Sentry opens up reports a bug, opens an issue is now triaged by an agent then assigns it to another agent to then open a PR. The PR is now like open for review that gets reviewed first by an agent. But at that point, you're like, at what point does a human come into the loop? And that's what continuous AI is all about, which is there are certain points where you do need to like take over the controls and take a look. I know there's like we have this term called vibe coding, and there's a lot of emphasis on like folks like vibe coding like zero shot prompts into full on deployed YC back startups. And I think that's a bit of a ruse, to be quite honest. I think there's going to be a lot of manipulation of like how do you get that thing to be production ready. And like we're seeing a ton of articles this week about exploits within AI, with a couple different providers. So we should all be cautious around like how we're implementing these tools and leveraging them. But also, again, I do want to encourage like to have fun, see what we can do, put things in the staging, but be cautious about like how we get these things to production and like when the human comes into the loop. But I wanted to break down this as well. So I don't know if I got much. I know one person who's super advanced in AI, so I'll continue to breaking down unless I hear otherwise. But the way we think about like AI and the concept of AI coding agents is you have the 3 pillars, which is your models, your rules, and your tools. And for a brief explanation, what models are specifically these are the foundational models like Anthropic or GPT. These are your brain for the agent. The brain specifically has the knowledge of like what to do in certain situations. But the brain is not as smart in certain situations, which is then comes with rules. So rules are basically system messages. So I want to make two different clarifications, which is like system message is the thing you bake into your agent, into your coding assistant. Prompt is like what we probably are familiar with, like ChatGPT. Those are things we type. So it's like mutable, it's experience that you type at your fingertips to like provide instructions on demand. System messages or rules are specifically there to be baked into your experience. So example is like stove is hot, don't touch it. Like that's a rule that the agent will always know that the stove is hot. So think about your linting, or if you use any sort of formatting, or if you how you do imports, or what libraries you can use. Like, do you use any libraries? You build it all. Like that's specifically an opportunity to like provide a system message of rule to know like where the boundaries are. And then tools are essentially a lot of folks like you probably know MCP. Tools are like just like an API. These are bundled up tools specifically with endpoints that work with an agent or with AI and specifically. So it's a new paradigm as of like last November. Or November of last year, because I guess we're coming up to another November, which is crazy. It's just the year's going by quick. Uh, but this is an opportunity for us to like have this sort of like interactions with things like APIs, endpoints, other tools, and be able to call them on demand. So I wrote a blog post on the Continue.dev blog about like can AI can code, but can it think? And there was a tweet that I saw from Brendan about like, okay, what models are people using? And Claude by far, Sonnet 4 was like the premier model for writing code. It's done such a great job in the last like 9 months for devs worldwide. And then GPT-5 came out. And then also Opus came out specifically in that same week. So this was like about 2 weeks ago. And what I ended up discovering is like there are certain models for certain situations where like a GPT-5 is a very, very large, hefty model. It's great for reasoning and thinking and planning and writing issues and like really trying to debug certain situations that are kind of pretty gnarly. But a sonnet is like what I end up coming to the conclusion is like sonnet is specifically good for just handling a task. So if you have a well-scoped idea or thought, ship it. If it's unscoped, sonnet, GPT-5. So the if you're interested in going deeper into this, like there are models that are foundational models that are much larger and have like billions of parameters. And there are some that don't have, maybe have 1 billion or 2 billion parameters. So there are like the smaller models will be used as like, or there's large language models and then there's like small language models. And it's like important to know the distinction. So for things like summarizing a page, like you could actually use a small language model and actually run that on your MacBook or your phone uh, pretty easily. So I think there's a lot of emphasis on folks using large language models for everything. And I think the folks who emphasize that are the folks who sell large language models as a business. So I'd be like very cautious around, okay, I want to use the biggest model for everything because it works all the time. And it's going to cost you quite a bit of money to do that because you pay in token uses, like so inputs and outputs. So for that reason, I'd probably like go build something with a large language model, but then optimize using small language models, or just use transformers or use stuff local that you can. I think it's going to go much further, especially if you're building stuff for your work and cost is a concern or optimization is a concern. There are ways to optimize this, which I won't get to in those details in this talk, but it's like worth noting. So continue. We actually are shipping today a CLI, and the way we sort of approach this. So the CLI will be, I think the PR might got merged this morning. I actually have not even. I dropped the kids off at school, and then I have not even got into my GitHub to find out what's happened since I went to sleep last night. But I'm going to assume it got merged today. Continue. I had mentioned we're open source. We have a CLI that's now open source as of today. It gives you the ability to like choose different models. So these could be models running through Ollama, LM Studio, what have you. They can work locally. And I think I didn't mention this, but like my flight to and back from Nigeria was about 16 hours. Two flights I had to do. I had to stop over in DC. Um, the entire time I was able to code offline using my local models on my machine. And I really appreciate that because like what we can do with Continue and what we can do with local models is like really keep everything on your machine. Like you don't have to go share data specifically to a third party to train. So one thing I did emphasize is like these gives you an opportunity to like choose between hosted or private models as well. And then I mentioned I was coding. I spent a lot of the time building this little tool called Vibe Check, which hopefully I'll get some time to show it off in a moment. But Vibe Check is basically if you wanted to, I mentioned vibe coding. The concept is I wanted to apply a vibe check to find out which models perform best for me. And this is specifically, I wanted to run this before I got on the airplane to find out which models could actually perform the best for me offline to help me build the code I wanted to write in the exit row on the airplane for about 10 to 16 hours. So yeah, that's open source, and you're more than welcome to take a look at it. It works, but I got to update the documentation to make it more clear on how you can get some value out of it. So TBD on that. Hopefully, I'll get that tomorrow. So I want to explain the idea of prompts. So I explained like the agents, the models, the tools, or rules, but I didn't explain prompts. So prompts are going to be like you type into the chat, the extension, whatever it is, build me an app, and immediately you get chicken wings. And like the reason for this, and like this is like a lot of what I get feedback on, which is like AI is just not ready for prime time. I ask it to do a thing, it comes back and like gives me chicken wings instead of an app, and the joke is appetizer. So like the model doesn't know the distinction between appetizer and an application. Um, it's funny. I can't hear you laughing, but I'm going to assume you're laughing at that joke. But what I'm getting at is what we do with the rules. If we could apply a rule. So as a senior developer who builds front end applications, build me an app. And like the way we apply that rule is like through the system message. So every time I add a prompt, it already knows, hey, the context we have is code, websites. Like when I say app, I mean application. So the output should be a beautiful website or a beautiful application. And that's because that's why we have the rules built onto this. I actually wrote a whole blog post specifically about the anatomy of rules when I was relearning how to write Ruby code earlier this year. So the way I did this is actually I took a book, test-driven development in Ruby, and I just generated based on the PDF, generated rules. So like, what are you take every chapter? How do you summarize each chapter in one line? Summarize that into a rule, and then now we know these are our test-driven development best practices in Ruby. So every time I write any Ruby code, I use my agent to assist me in writing tests first. And I find it really fun because like this was how I worked 10 years ago at a full-time working as a job. It was more nostalgic of like, can we get this done? Can we like write tests to then have the agent go assist me in building out different parts of this product. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Definitely read the blog post if you're interested. I did have a guide specifically in the blog post on like how to describe rules or how to basically structure your rules so they're actually useful as well. So again, I can go to like a lot more detail on this, but I did also write a blog post on it, so feel free to take a look at that. But the way I would summarize this is like you have an agent and you say build me an app and it gives you chicken wings. It's almost the equivalent of you give a baby a Sharpie or a toddler a Sharpie and you like let it loose inside of a museum. And like you need rules. Like you need to know like, hey, the Sharpie's only for paper or it's only to be used in these situations. But if you give it a Sharpie and you're like, hey, just go through and like have fun, you're not going to have a really good day. You probably have to pay a lot of money to fix the museum. Um, I mentioned this in passing, but like there was a pretty large story a couple weeks ago around an agent basically dropping a database, thinking as it was running test, part of the test suite was like dropping the database, but it ended up dropping production, and like agents can get confused. So if you have no rules in place of like, hey, as we run tests, we never test production data, we only test data, and here are the sort of guardrails. Um, what I ended up doing is I was writing a lot of Python about a month ago. And again, another language I just didn't, I'd spent a lot more time writing a lot of more front end stuff in the last couple of years in React and JavaScript, TypeScript, and or actually did a lot of Go as well, but not a ton of Python. So I found that my agent was specifically always messing up on every time we shipped up to production. Like there'd be format issues, there'd be like this small annoying things that maybe a junior engineer would be doing. So instead, what I did is I added a pre-commit hook. I just built like a big little quick script to basically say every time you commit, like run formatting. So I use rough for formatting and run the test. And it's like something as like I would never do that as myself as an engineer because I'd find that annoying because I would run the test, I'd run the formatting, and I wouldn't want to be blocked on trying to commit and the test and the formatting would work. But with an agent, I do need that rule. Like I need to say, hey, we're not going that fast. We need to have some sort of gate. If the build fails or if the tests don't run or if the formatting's off, we're not going directly to GitHub. And it gives me some space to basically say, hey, let's go ahead and let's slow down and review what we're doing. But still, if I wanted to turn the agent on the full on YOLO mode, I could do that with still having a peace of mind to say, hey, we're not going live with this until like a human is in the loop. And that's the whole the concept is like in the summary like continuous AI is like I can continually use the AI to like enhance my developer workflow and like fix bugs and ship features. But I will always get prodded when things break. So like I will get a notification when things break. I will get an issue opened. Like I've set up all these like mechanisms for me to do my side projects pretty quickly by just not breaking the system. So tools I mentioned MCP. One of the examples that I really loved, and we've started using at Continue, which is Mentlify. Mentlify is an open source, well, I guess it's open core. I guess you specifically say open core documentation platform. And what I love about this is like by default, it gives you like access to an MCP server. So MCP, as I mentioned, it's like essentially like an API framework that is really specific for AI. But what that means is like my entire documentation can be an MCP server. So as opposed to like me searching the docs and looking specifically for the thing I'm looking for or whatever the syntax, I can leverage AI and say, hey, use the MCP server to find out how authentication works. And it can spit out, hey, in the docs or in the MCP, this is how it works. This is how we implement it. And what I love about this is I've been leveraging this for like using new tools. So whenever I onboard to like a new tool, like I've used ingest for job handling for like writes to the database. Um, that was a tool I just never used before, but they had an MCP server. So immediately I had the MCP server. I start scaffolding out my project. Now it's time to add ingest. Now I'm basically using ingest as MCP to onboard, as opposed to like having the docs open and my code base open. I can just have docs live within my agent, my assistant. And there's a call out to the continue docs, but yeah, space basically we do have an MCP server that we can use to continue docs MCP that I use pretty heavily to also write new docs for continue. So whenever there's a change and I have to go catch up to find out what happened, I can leverage the MCP server to say, hey, are we covered with the docs? Is there a way to explain this already? And how do we fill in the gaps? And I find that super helpful at PR time because the context, and there's a concept that I don't think I actually have a slide for, which is context engineering. Context engineering is like the opposite of vibe coding, where you provide all context that you need to go do the AI agent. And specifically, like when you open a PR, like you have like the five files you've changed, so that's your context. So if you want to do anything else, like write docs based on like the five files of change, it's a perfect time to do that because the context is living right there in the PR or within your Git commits. So one of the things I did for the workshop is I specifically uh, I wrote a project and actually let me I could I can show this in let me see if I can just open up a new screen. There we go. So I'm going to pull over my blog. But I wanted to pull over specifically keep me honest if you guys can see this. But basically, I built this app for Nigerians to do a workshop in, and I built this app in 7 commits. And the way I did this is like, okay, I built the chat app, and then the next commit I built like better performance. So what's cool about this is like this is a pretty performant web app because I sort of broke it down to actually a lot to megabyte. It used to be 256, but I think it's because I'm on faster internet. I could probably change the network and it'll start compressing things. But the way I did this is I went through all my commits, and the way I did this, and this is like a great way to kind of explain continuous AI in a nutshell, which is each commit is now broken down into steps on how I implemented it. So I specifically said, hey, take my commit and provide a tutorial on how to re-implement the thing I just did. And then the way this works is you get specific prompts to copy and then drop into your continue assistant, which I know I haven't even shown continue yet, but I'll show it in a second. But I just found that like a super novel way to like, as you think about documentation or you think about like engineering syncs or like you're trying to like build culture within your company, but also you want to leverage AI to do it. A lot of things as engineers, like we just kind of just we throw over the wall and like, hey, we'll do this later. Like documentation is something that we just all sort of like limit ourselves until like, oh, we'll just like do that later when it's ready. Like this is just a prototype. And it's usually the one things to like I used to build a lot of internal tools for a couple of jobs ago. And one of the hardest things is like getting other people to use the thing you built. And it's because it wasn't documented and it wasn't tested. So like writing tests, I'd use caution with that because sometimes the models can be a little more zealous on like what test they write and whether they're useful or not. But you could always add in so you can always have preventative measures to keep the model honest. So um, yeah, cool. Sorry, I'm like throwing off. We have some other we have folks joining as well. I imagine in SA you're grabbing that. So disclaimer, I'm going to walk through a couple different ideas that I've built as of recent, and actually since June 1st. I've been working at Continue since June 1st. I've had access to a lot of AI, and I've been like kind of just testing the limitations of what I can get accomplished using AI. So not everything was vibe coded, but everything was built with context engineering. And the first one that I'm actually super excited about that I've been using pretty heavily, it's called Pull to Press, and Pull to Press specifically is it's um, a website, a web app, really, where I could just drop a pull request and generate a blog post. So this morning, I ended up doing some optimizing for my website that like decreased the bundle by 82%. It's very front end friendly. And I dropped in the PR. And what's cool about this is like the PR itself. Here we go. The PR itself, like it already has a natural progression of like what could be a blog post. So like I've got the PR description, I've got like my generated GitHub action performance response. I've got some comments like fixes I made as I was reviewing. I found bugs, so I'd have like a comment of a bug I fixed, another comment of a bug I fixed, another comment of a bug I fixed. Okay, there's a bit of a trend here. But yeah, every time I fix a bug as I'm trying to solve a problem, I always write a comment. And this is like me as an engineer. Like I find it helpful if someone wants to review my code, I will write a comment to be like, hey, things updated. This is what I did. This is what I discovered. And I'm a big fan of emojis. What's cool about this, I use Claude to also review my code as well. So Claude will go through and be very detailed. But what I'm getting at is like all this context and like this review, the back and forth, my context engineering as well. I've got 11 files change. I'm a big fan of writing blog posts. So what I've done is I've actually written this blog post. Oh, it's actually in draft mode. Um, well, I could show you on localhost real quick. Let's see if I got this ready to go. But I can show you the live version of this blog post, which is here. Of course, it opens up in a different screen. Oh, yeah. So anyway, it's mainly because my draft is still draft. But what's cool about this is like I could make a choice where if I use CN, so I'm going to show you live basically the CLI we're launching today. So this is going to be we normally have continue, which opens up in a VS Code instance. Oh, let me space that out. Oh, I can't do the bang. That's right. Anyway, we'll just use CN for this. Make the last blog post draft false. So I could go into my oh, looks like I have a bit of an issue. Just make sure I pick the right agent. Yep, I've got the right one. We'll just switch to model real quick just to oh, I do need to update too as well. But we'll see if this works if I don't need to update then. So basically, I could go through, and this is going to be a very simple change, which is like change the front matter to from true to false. Um, so we see we changed that. Now I'm going to basically run this to see if I could see that blog post. Um, that's a very contrived example. Like I wouldn't use AI to go change one feature or one flag from true to false. But for the sake of the demo, we'll just continue to roll with it. So now I should be able to see my latest blog post that's now not basically not in draft form. But this is the blog post that I generated, and I edited a little bit because I wanted to make sure the commentary, matches my tone and everything like that. But I built pull to press really because I love writing a blog post. I love sharing what I built. Also, a part of the reason why I sort of transitioned from sales to full-time engineering is because I always wrote like down notes on how I learned something. And this is why I write blog posts is like for me to go remember what I did previously. So I ended up having a ton of errors and things that were just breaking the build. But I wanted to like document that for historical reasons for me to go back and be like, hey, let's never do this again. This is the proper way to make performant web apps that will show up and be SEO friendly and etc. And then there's like I've been using Vite, which I've never used. Well, I've used for production, but I've never been this intimate with the Vite config on bundling websites to be performant for like the internet. Um, the last time I did this was like 2017 for a job. So there's a lot of stuff I missed on like how the webs progressed. So this is a way for me to just like keep a note in a journal and a log for me. So, but I mentioned like these are a couple different ideas that I basically vibe coded. So that's one. I just showed you CN real quick to how to manipulate. I'll show you like a better example that I have a bug right now. I actually built this thing called passwords that we ended up having and I'm gonna need to open this up in a new browser because I don't have the link. So we ended up having like a SOC 2 conversation at Continue, and the result was like, hey, we should have better passwords. So I thought it'd be funny if I could say like if I have Pizza Brian, like that'd be a great password. And I ended up vibe coding this actually, to be quite honest, where I'm like, okay, it needs to have what one number that basically will get you SOC 2 compliant passwords. And the joke of this is like eventually you will start passing all this, like all the test. So we're gonna add like a thing here, and it's gonna say you need to have the year, the current year specifically, which is this was it kind of gets silly. Um, so the joke is like you'll never have a compliant password for this site because they'll always add a new rule. So I think I have like 30 or 40 rules. But yeah, so you need a password that includes the sum of 7 times 8. So this now gets a bit ridiculous. And I think it's going to be something even, oh, a country name. So now I did have like Nigeria, which I think this is actually broken because it won't include it won't include every country. So I should probably add um, a proper country dictionary. And now I have an emoji, which I think is not actually real. You can't do emojis and passwords, but cool. And then basically what I'm getting at is like it's just a little fun game that I would never build myself because it would take too much time and like what am I gonna do with it? But I was able to like leverage AI to prototype and like kind of learn how to build a thing. So moving on from that, um, this is a thing actually I've been building pretty heavily the last couple months called contributor info. And the one thing I wanted to point out for this is when in the concept of continuous AI, I'd mentioned like since your error is open an issue, you can assign it to a reviewer and etc. What I've been really loving to do is I've actually been just generating issues. And this is something I don't do a ton with my own projects because like the amount of time it takes to write an issue and then like it's just going to sit there, you're never going to get to it. But what I'm finding is like when you open up the editor to do something with AI, it's better to have a plan than to just like go with no plan and then you're going to get yourself in like a weird situation. So what I've been doing is essentially just like I have an idea for an app or sorry, a feature within my project. I will actually chat with the AI agent. So usually what this looks like is if I go in here, I can go into I hit Shift Tab and I can go to plan mode. In plan mode, I could be like, hey, I want to actually I'll actually fix a real bug that I saw earlier. That's kind of annoying me. So all my blog posts have a date, but there are now dates that are now invalid. So I actually want to see. I'm going to write a plan to basically see if we can debug this essentially. And I won't actually fix it. What I'll do is open an issue and I'll fix it after. But I noticed that each blog post has invalid date. I need to debug and figure out a resolution. So the hope is that, and normally what I do is like I could also add like if I had docs or if I had like a which I'll struggle to know specifically how my dates are being validated because I just actually added that yesterday. So no, I added that a few weeks ago. But what I'm getting at is like I'll just like give it a nod of like look actually, let me just leave it at that. But yeah, if I had more context on how dates are managed within my project, I'd add it here. So that way the context is like just look how dates are managed. Don't go off and do something weird or random. Like let's stay focused. So what it's going to do is going to read through essentially just my how dates are managed. The way it actually works is I basically have my date in my URL. So every URL's got my date, and then each post has a timestamp date as well. But I think something's missing on that, and I'm not actually sure. So what it's going to say is I can see the issue. It looks like everything in the front matter format, but the JavaScript code is adding something to the end. Oh, it looks like it's adding a time zone timestamp. So let me check what date it's serving parts. Cool. So it already found the issue. It's going to debug that. What I'll do next is probably just open up a GitHub issue to fix it. Because I find myself in a place where I constantly have things I could be working on AI, but I don't have time to constantly just like watch it and babysit it. So what I've loved actually is assigning it to like Copilot or to other agents and saying, hey, actually, what I do is like I commute to San Francisco. I'm here in Oakland today. Um, I will assign it to Copilot or similar to another agent, and then by the time I get off the bus, it will more than likely be done, and I can review it in a PR. So I'm gonna let it work because I know I have a couple other slides I want to get to, and I also do know we can ask them questions. But what I'm getting at is like issue. PR, I end up using like Cubic or now Continue. We have a thing that we're working on about reviewing PRs as well. I leverage the agent to basically give me some like actually legitimate feedback. And I think there's a lot of tools that are doing a really good job on having better context on the code base and then not just giving you random feedback. So I find it better than some of my peers providing feedback in my code as well. I did show you the tracking I do with issues and how I basically generate issues specifically for the things I'm looking to solve. Again, the whole context is continuous AI. And then one thing I want to apply is like we have models, rules, and tools. When we have like a system, when we have such a good framework for this, this is what our agents are. So like we have a lot of commentary on like what are agents, what agents can do, but and the reality is like when you have these pillars, like you're basically that's your agent. So when you see other products and tools and open source things, think of that concept of like these are your models, rules, and tools. And that's what your agent's doing. And this is what your agent has access to. So like I have an agent for just reviewing code locally. I have agents for like debugging database performance and site performance things. I build a bunch of agents specifically for that, and that's what Continue does. Is we help you share and build open source or sorry build agents with open and closed source models as well. So and that was what I decided here. So encourage you if you want to check it out, please do. Hit me up if you have any questions. That's my job is to tell you about this. Um, there's some cool Reddit forums. So obviously there's Local Llama. If you are at all on Reddit, you probably stumbled on Local Llama. Lots of large articles come out of there. There's a cool Reddit called AI Memory, which is how to make your agent smarter by using things like Cogni and there's a mem something I forgot what it was called, but anyway, it's all referenced here in AI memory. A lot of people don't think about AI memory. This is why I'm calling it out. Is how you make your agent smarter. I mentioned Continuous open source, 28,000 plus stars. Would love your star if you got one. Min Zero, thank you so much. And then the one thing I wanted to also just kind of round out, which is amplify.dev. So we at Continue, we strongly believe that we're not meant to try to replace devs with AI. We're meant to amplify them. And the way we do that is like by teaching and showing concepts like this to show how you can like leverage your agent to do smarter things and not not be so dumb. So that actually winds down my slides. I can take any questions at this point, and then I will continue to, no pun intended, watch this issue be resolved.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, please ask your questions. Feel free to use audio. We are a small group, so using audio is fine. If you're more comfortable using chat, Zoom chat, that is an option as well. A comment from Mark. No questions from me, but you demoed some really interesting tools, and I'm looking forward to investigating further.
Cool. Yeah, and yeah, this is me online. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to chat with folks.
If you don't have any immediate questions, maybe you are comfortable sharing what you're currently doing with AI tools. That that's a good topic to discuss here as well. Thank you, Joe, for your comment. Thank you for joining us.
Actually, let's see if I fix this.
I'll jump in. I joined late. You said you have a whole bunch of agents spun up. What do you tend to run those on? Are those something that you host locally, or do you have platforms? And just curious about that process.
Yeah, so I think it's what I'll point out is like Continue does have we could so you have a team and like you like to continue across a team. You could host your agents here. Host is like a stretch because really Continue does the heavy lifting of like running your agent with the models and rules and tools. What the way we look at agents is it's just a markdown file. So like the way it just gives you instructions to point the direction to what you're doing. I've been also using this other tool called Claude, and I'll show you what's really interesting about Claude, and I look forward to embedding this idea inside of Continue. Um, so like this is going to be my meta agent, and I created agent to basically create other agents. So I find myself in chat of like, hey, there's this very specific thing that I need to get solved. Create an agent to do such and such. So like the agent itself has access to specific tools. It also has a name, it has a description on when it should be called. And then it has essentially those rules like stove is hot, fire, basically, or don't touch it. Like that's what this is, just in Markdown. So I don't host my agents on any sort of like server. I know like Run Loop and Daytona can run agents. There are other agent frameworks that are hosted situations and servers. I haven't even got that far because I don't think I need to have anything deployed. Because like again, the I think it's enough having your code in like private repos on GitHub, but like to deploy your code offline to someone else for an agent to run becomes like a security question. So I just use specifically just mark down specific agents to then run locally on my machine using my continue agent. Or in this case, I was using Claude because I was testing this out for some stuff we're working out in the future. So hopefully it answers your question.
Yep, that makes sense. So it's kind of continue driven or some other, coding agent
Yeah.
driven, not some kind of lane graph and Pydantic AI kind of agent bot. Yeah, that
Yeah, and
makes
there's
sense.
like there's situations where that would make a lot of sense. Like I've been building this app called Dinner People, which is like another passion project that doesn't quite work. But the way it works is like I can upload a recipe, so basically a video from Instagram. I'll download it on my phone. I'll upload it here, and what I'll do is like um, I'll struggle. I actually this doesn't quite work yet because I have this in like a sandbox offline that I have agents running and are deployed on things like the Daytona to go do things that like high compute things I just don't want to do on my machine, essentially. So like that's a use case where I would use an agent that would be deployed in a system. But I quite haven't got to, as far as like how like what my recommendation would be just yet, because I'm still sort of just using markdown focused agents that will know where to point continue to do and run things.
Yep, makes sense. Looks like a fun app, by the way. Thanks.
Yeah, I do a lot of cooking and I do a lot of Instagram scrolling just for food recipes. So I just found that I wanted to download it. So then the next step is like create an Instacart order where I can like order specific things that I need for making some things on the weekend.
But we still have about 5 minutes remaining, so if you have question, if you still have a question, feel free to ask. Brian, I have a question about Continue. I had a quick look at your website, and the concept of continuous AI is novel to me. I'll be honest, but makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious if you have any case studies for applications in maybe in the industry or yes, any case study.
Yeah, I think what we're so there's another term that other people are calling like async agentic frame like workflows, which is a bit of a mouthful, which is why we like continuous AI. But like what I was the examples I was using around like I open a issue, the issue gets I use Gemini's agent they basically they have a GitHub action that will go triage your issues. So they'll just apply labels. So something as simple as applying labels. But if anybody's worked in like the Kubernetes space or if you contributed to like one of the CNCF projects, they're like big in the labels. So like a label would then add someone else from the code owners to be assigned and stuff like that. So like there's a lot of stuff we've already been doing that exist in like automations that work in silos. And what like where the case study is basically like and like we're currently trying to sort of co-locate some of these stories together. So like this is something we've been really only working on for the past 3 weeks is continuous AI. But I think also GitHub has a good blog post on the GitHub Next blog around continuous AI and like what the vision is for the future of like leveraging AI in your workflow. So what I'm getting at is like the open up issue, get it labeled and triaged, to then get assigned, to then get worked on, to have a PR open, to then have the PR open and tested in staging and deployed, and then have the review agent come through to then say, by the time I wake up, like all that process has already been like I have something happening while I'm sleeping. I've got a PR opened and I didn't have to go watch through the entire triaging process. I've got a good example of like what I can actually have accomplished. So yesterday I had a demo from an engineer who um, we're using Slack to basically fire continue off to go run async. So we do have a part of our announcement today is async workflows as well. So in Slack, you can then say, hey, take a look at the screenshot. This thing's broken, or here's the logs. Slack agent, go open up an environment. End up using run loop for this to so to answer the previous question, like we are using run loop to run an agent async, so we can sleep at night and have the thing run in a siloed container. And then it will just come back to you once it's done to then say, hey, work's done. Here's a PR. So it's something we've been testing out just internally just so far. But there are other places and people who have been doing this. I think we're just like only 2 months into this for people having full on like let's let the AI do a full on cycle. And I think we're now just building trust right now within the industry to be comfortable to talk about this. So part of this is like sharing with you guys, but also I'll be doing a lot more blogging and talking on stage around this.
Very cool. I was very happy when I reached out to you and you said yes to speaking because like I always enjoy your presentations, and now it happens that you are working in AI. The
Yeah.
topics align very well with what OpenTeams is working on. Just one more question, and I don't want to sideline anybody else. Any any questions from the audience? Well, just one more question. And this is something that I've been thinking a lot, is that like we're all talking about automating tasks, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on like, monitoring performance and accuracy of AI tools. If you doing any of that, and maybe you came across tools, maybe you're building one.
Yeah, so I did mention in passing was vibe check, which I didn't get a chance to like run through because I was just a little bit nervous on the documentation, this not being quite there to my standards. But essentially, it's vibe check will go through a flow of like, here is a demo file, implement this feature or adjust this setup. So it's all written in Python. So if we are Python folks, like maybe you have some feedback on my Python code. But essentially, it will give you performance and benchmark metrics and like this was fast, this was slow, this failed. Um, I also dropped in the just mentioning because I know we're at time. I dropped in the issue for the bug I found, so I'll go ahead and fix that later today. If anybody want to watches my agent basically go fix that async, that would be the next step because I've also got to jump to calls and we'll have time to fix it.
Okay, thank you. Sounds great. I will stop the recording now.